Good morning. I'm Kathy Larimer, the newly elected board president of CCUU. Thank you. Welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist. So who are we as Community Church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Please look to your weekly emails for announcements. Please also complete the survey that was sent to you regarding our search for a new minister. It's a SurveyMonkey survey, okay? And I will now turn this over to Amy Earhart Lovelace, who is leading the search selection committee for our new minister. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of Jolie Bonk. She couldn't be here today, but she is the genius behind our survey, the SurveyMonkey. It is, she has some paper copies, and she wanted to make sure that everyone understands that if you are active in our church, then we want your voice to be heard. So it isn't just members, friends of the church who are active participants in our church. Your voice matters too. Please fill out a survey. We would like to have many more voices than we currently have, and we have to pay for the survey. So I know we only have it, I believe, through July. So if you haven't done it and you're not sure how to do it, or you have questions about how to do it, email the board at ccuu.org, or Jolie. I don't know her email off the top of my head, but if you email the board can get it to Jolie or myself, and we can help. There are also these out front. There's several of them, and we can make plenty more. If for whatever reason you prefer to do it on a piece of paper, they're all anonymous. These surveys are anonymous. Obviously, if you hand it to me, I might know who you are, but you can fold it up, put it in an envelope, I promise not to look, and I can get it to Jolie, or if you just leave it here at the office at church, Jolie will come by and pick them up if we let her know that these are here. So just reach out to board or me or Jolie if you are interested in doing the survey. If you're not sure if you should take the survey, just let us know. Active youth, teens who are active in our community are also invited. So if you know someone in your life who's been active in our church and they're a teen, please let them know that their voice too is being requested. In addition, the Ministerial Search Committee is in the process of looking for our next minister. We have our profile up through the UUA Transitions Ministry. There's a process that we go through. I'm sure many of you have gone through this process with CCUU and are much more informed than I am. But I am in close connection with Christine Purcell, who is the current Transitions Ministry Manager. And so she and I have worked closely on a profile of CCUU, using CCU's documents that they've used in the past about what we traditionally look for in a minister, and what we'll be using the survey to give more information to an incoming minister. That's why it's so important. But the profile is up, the general profile. It is live, so that individuals, ministers who may be interested from across the country or perhaps the world should be getting in touch with us soon. It is an odd time. Typically, these profiles go up in December for an August 1st start date. And that didn't happen, for us. So it is odd. It's an odd time of the year, which is why the Ministerial Search Committee, along with the board, and the direction of Christine Purcell with the UUA, our first choice is looking for a contract minister. The reason for that is that there are very, very, very few ministers right now who are looking for called ministry. They're just not there because they have taken another position for this calendar year. So we are looking for a contract minister for 2 years. That would give us someone here at our pulpit to help lead our community, and it would give us that time to really make a good, solid choice on our next called minister. So as we're talking about when you're thinking about the survey, this is to look for our next minister, our next called minister, but keep in the back of your mind that whoever we contract with is a contract minister for this to get us through this interim period. We could choose them, that would be something, but we may not choose them, is the idea. So I just wanted to update everybody with that. If there are questions, I'd be happy to talk with anyone after service. I don't have to rush out today like I normally do. So I do have some time. Please let me know. Thank you.
We now light our flame. It is now our time for all ages with Cynthia Ramirez.
Good morning, everyone. I have a fun one this morning. Why they call New Orleans the Crescent City. Mommy, this was written by Sally Jackson. Mommy, why did the man on TV call New Orleans the Crescent City? Well, Kim, I think this would be a good question to practice researching on your own. Should I ask my teacher or just check the internet? Let's do this a little differently. Instead of just asking for the answer, let's go find it ourselves. Okay, where do we start? How would you like to go to the library and learn how to find answers for yourself? Sounds like fun. Kim and her mother got into the car and drove to the library. When they arrived at the library, there was a policewoman at the door looking in people's packages as they went in and out. What is she doing, Mommy? She's checking to make sure that no one removes any books that are not supposed to leave the building. Which books can't leave? Reference books, like the ones that we will be using today. Oh, good. Then they will be here. Yes, they will. Kim looked around at all the books and asked, how can we find the right ones? We can look up the subject, Crescent City, in the computer, and it will tell us which books contain information on it. They found several books on the subject and printed out the list. Where are they, Mommy? They are in the reference room, and that room has a librarian working there to help us to find the books that we need. They took the list of the reference to the reference librarian, and he directed them to the section on Louisiana. They thanked him and began reading. It seems that it is called the Crescent City because of the shape of the bend in the Mississippi River that the city is built on. As they were leaving, they showed their bags to the policewoman. Kim said, "But Mommy, in the atlas, New Orleans is just a huge blob on both sides of the river." Well, it has grown together with all the other small cities, but the river still bends there. The policewoman responded, "Have you ever been to New Orleans?" "No, I haven't," Kim answered. "I was born in New Orleans." That's how we say it, and I can tell you the real reason for the nickname. Kim jumped up and down and clapped her hands. "Why is it called the Crescent City?" "Because they don't do left turns in New Orleans." How do they go anywhere?" Kim's mother asked. "You make a U-turn. Hundreds and thousands of U-turns all day and all night. I was a helicopter pilot on traffic duty before I retired, and I watched all these U-turns. When the cars had their lights on, they became little semicircles of red and white lights. Do you know another name for a semicircle?" Kim shook her head. "No, it's a crescent." "So that is the real reason." The policewoman smiled and winked at Kim's mother. She smiled, took Kim by the hand, and started for the car. Kim said, "I like her reason best of all." Mom smiled and squeezed her hand and whispered, "So do I."
Our first reading today is "The Sky is Falling, Maybe, Henny Penny or Chicken Little" by Mari Ness. The story of Henny Penny, also called Chicken Little, or sometimes Chicken Lickin', not to be confused with finger licking from Kentucky Fried Chicken. The terrified little chicken, convinced that the sky is falling, and that life as we, or at least as chickens know it, is over, is common throughout European folklore. So common that the sky is falling and Chicken Little and related names have become bywords for fear-mongering and the often tragic results that occur. Exactly where the first version of the story was told is a bit unclear, but one of the first to record the tale was Just Matthias Thiele, 1795 to 1874, a Danish scholar employed at the Royal Danish Library. Inspired by Jacob and William Grimm, he began collecting Danish folk tales. Published his first collection in 1818, the collections proved to be so influential that Hans Christian Andersen would later dedicate a story to Thiele's daughter. His version of Henny Penny appeared in his 1823 collection, with the familiar elements already present: rhyming names, a series of born animals, a terror set off by something completely ordinary, in this case, a falling nut, and a very hungry fox, more than willing to take advantage of the situation. That version was not, however, translated into English until 1853. Before that, young American readers had access only to a slightly different version written and published by John Green Chandler. The remarkable story of Chicken Little caught the attention of Sarah Josepha Hale. Chandler could not have found a better publicist. These days, Hale is mostly remembered for writing Mary Had a Little Lamb and establishing Thanksgiving. But in her day, Hale also worked as a novelist and as the editor of influential journals focused on women, including Ladies Magazine, 1828 to 1836, and the extremely popular Goody's Ladies book, 1837 to 1877. She had also published a successful book of children's poetry and was thus regarded as a reliable judge of suitable children's books. Chandler's success inspired several other American writers to publish versions of the story throughout the 19th and early 20th century, nearly all sticking with the original, rather grim ending. But if 19th century children loved that sort of thing, mid-20th century publishers were less enthralled and began switching to versions that tweaked the ending. And by tweaked, I mean completely changed. Instead of getting gobbled up by a fox, the foolish characters instead managed to reach a king who assured them that the only thing that falls from the sky is rain. This is the version I first encountered when I was about 3. I didn't like it then, and not just because The Cat in the Hat and Green Eggs and Ham were obviously better books. And I'm not fond of it now. I'm all for reassuring young children, but this altered ending just doesn't work for me, perhaps because I find it difficult to believe that animals terrified that the sky is falling will believe any leader, even a king, who tells them the opposite. Or perhaps because I'm all too aware that lots of things other than rain can fall from the sky. Meteors, volcanic ash, debris from falling satellites, that sort of thing. It's now time for our offering. Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends' generosity help us do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccuunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659. Text GIVE. You can also send a check to CCUU at 6690 Fleur de Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70124. And you can give today in person. Please come forward during our musical offertory interlude. If you're unable to come forward, raise your hand and we'll come to you. Thank you for your generosity. Now is our sacred time of joys and sorrow. If you are online, please write your joys and sorrows in the chat box to be read aloud. If you are in person, there are cards of joys and sorrows in our foyer. If you were not able to fill one out earlier, please feel free during our musical interlude to do so. And we thank you. It's a great joy that Rosa has received her work permit and is available to clean houses on a regular or one-time basis. Contact Liz Trotter to arrange for her services. A joy from Amy Earhart Lovelace. It's wonderful to see new faces here today. You are welcome here. A joy from Kat Vieira. Happy that my daughter Sophia is here at church today. This is her first time in a church. Welcome, Sophia. We also light a candle for all the joy on Father's Day that our Father's love has given us. We also light a candle of sorrow for the loss of a father or of a father's love. And 2 more candles for all the unspoken joys and sorrows that are in our hearts.
I'll put this up as high as it goes. Our second reading today is The Boy Who Cried Wolf, Analysis by Dr. Oliver Turley, lecturer in English at Loughborough University. The moral of The Boy Who Cried Wolf is usually summarized in one sentence. Liars are not believed, even when they speak the truth. Fables are short stories designed to teach morals, but the curious and surprising thing about The Boy Who Cried Wolf is that it has been shown to have the opposite effect. Children actually lied more when they had been told the story than before. In their book, Nurture Shock, New Thinking About Children, Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman analyze why this might be. They cite a study which showed that the famous story of George Washington telling the truth to his father over chopping down the family's cherry tree, a story which is grounded in reality as The Boy Who Cried Wolf likely ever was, was considerably more effective in convincing children that it was a bad idea to lie. The George Washington story, according to the study, reduced lying by 75% in boys and 50% in girls. The researcher who carried out the experiment then anonymized the central figure in case the reputation of George Washington just made a contributing factor. But even when the boy was made just an ordinary child rather than the future president of the United States, the story was still more effective in discouraging lying in children. Indeed, the boy who cried wolf even encouraged lying in its respondents. Why is this? After all, the boy in Aesop's fable suffers a terrible punishment. In the most extreme versions of the story, he's eaten by the wolf himself. So his lies cost him his life. But even in the more mainstream versions cited, he still ends up in serious trouble with his master because his actions led to the wolf getting away with attacking the flock. But as Bronson and Merriman observe, the fact that liars are punished when their lies are found out is not news to children. So the moral weight of the boy who cried wolf carries no shock value and imparts no warning to them. For smart children, the main worry with telling a lie is not losing people's trust, although of course this is a factor in Aesop's story, but in getting punished for your lies. But the story of George Washington and the cherry tree is more effective in encouraging honest behavior among children because the young George receives positive praise and respect for telling the truth. In other words, the story suggests that what children require is not a reminder of the threat of punishment for telling lies, but affirmation that telling the truth carries the promise of reward. It's not enough to teach children that lying is wrong, and this is where the limitations of the boy who cried wolf show themselves. Teachers and parents need to teach children that honesty is valued. Okay. You've probably noticed that the title of the sermon for today is called The Best Laid Schemes. And I realize that most of you have heard the quote, "The best laid plans of mice and men often go astray." But did you know that the actual quote is, "The best laid schemes, o mice and men, gang after gley"? Let me say that again. The best laid schemes, o mice and men, gang after gley. What is the importance of knowing that what we all know to be accurate is in reality a translation? A pretty good one, but still not the actual words of the Scottish poet Robert Burns. It comes from his poem To a Mouse, on turning her up in her nest with the plow, from November of 1785. Give you an idea. Here we go. "Wee sleekit Karen timorous beastie, oh what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou needna star away sae hasty with bicker and brattle. I would be laith to ren and chase thee with murder and pattle." Basically saying that the mouse doesn't need to fear him, he's not trying to kill it. It does lose a bit in that synopsis. The actual feelings being expressed are gone, but how many people have ever read the poem To a Mouse? And of those, how many in the Scottish dialect? We should question things that are presented to us as fact. Quite often they're interpretations rather than just facts. That's why police have so much trouble with eyewitness accounts of crimes. Or they used to have trouble. But now it seems that everyone is making cell phone videos of all of the world-changing events they witness each day, from their cat sleeping to anything that they might happen upon while they're wandering about outside, and occasionally of something truly world-shattering. One video can be manipulated, but so often now there are dozens of shots from various angles. It's a lot like watching a replay of a controversial play in a professional football game. Does this take away any of our constitutional rights? Does the replay take away the rights of a player to get away with an illegal tackle, a dropped pass, or an actual fumble? Possibly. But then again, neither shows anything that didn't happen, and they are being filmed in public places. Even in a case where over a dozen videos were shot while a police officer was kneeling on George Floyd's neck. With the ability to replay, listen, and time the event, there must be a trial. It's a constitutional right. How there could be any question about what actually happened, I'm sure I don't know, because regardless of what Mr. Floyd might have said or done, once on the ground and handcuffed, the need for any pressure on his neck was excessive force and led directly to his death. And yet the defense had to try to spin it to being an accidental death, although it took well over 8 minutes for this accident to cause his death. In this case, the verdict was guilty, but what about the next time or the next? How many other truths that we have taken for granted our entire lives are also merely interpretations or intentional manipulations of facts? The basis for most prejudice can be traced back to misinformation imparted as wisdom and fact. The truth is that most prejudice is simply a fear of the unknown. Someone who looks different, sounds different, or has different beliefs. Sadly, quite often these types of prejudice are perpetuated and even started in the very organizations that should be trying to eliminate such things. Organized religions, not all, but several, have a tendency to bring forth carefully selected text to forward their agendas. What are these agendas and why do they have them? First, we have to realize that organized religions are basically corporations with multiple offices, except for the Holy Roman Catholic Church, which is actually a country based in Vatican City, with embassies all over the world. The reason that so many of the doctrines of these organizations were written was to perpetuate the organization's existence. When I was a youngster in Sunday school, they used to tell us stories intended to impart life lessons. It's a very respected method of teaching. The Gospels are full of parables. Aesop's fables are often used for supporting morals. The moral of the story, if you do this, then this will happen. It is as simple as saying what goes around comes around. Karma will catch up with you. And a favorite of the character Maud, God will get you for that. Or any of our other ways of avoiding just saying that your actions must always bear consequences. We all remember the story of King Solomon and the baby. How wise he was after one of the boys in the class tripped another boy at the top of a flight of stairs in the church building itself, causing a loss of his front teeth. Not so tragic, as we were so young that they were still his first set, not the permanent set. Why would that event cause me to doubt these organizations? Because of my knowledge of Aesop's fables. There would be a reckoning for this sort of behavior, and there wasn't. At least not after his family had made a sizable donation to the local office of this particular non-taxed corporation. My experiences with a variety of these organizations as a musician and photographer continued for the next 40 years. As a musician, I was often asked to play for services and special occasions at dozens of different denominations, only to discover the amazing similarity between them, although they each try to convince their congregations that the others are misguided. How does this explain the use of some religious beliefs to turn people against other groups? It might be baffling, since so many of the organizations all work from the same bylaws outlined in the Gospels, and yet ignoring the part about all people being the same and children of God. It is in the central selection of which passages to quote, and then let the more fanatical members carry out the making of signs and shouting in protest to whatever they have decided to be against. Why would any such organization want to be against anything? It's simple. The old plot line often used in science fiction films. Find a common enemy to unite the world against it. Many of these organizations have their roots in times when their very existence required large numbers. These were times of warring countries before the discovery of gunpowder. They were fought with manpower armed only with spears and bows and arrows. Agriculture, without our massive machinery, was the main source of income. Young men were a necessity, so this brought about the prejudice against homosexuality, as this union could not produce the needed offspring. Later, the Holy Roman Church wouldn't allow young men to be married before they had fulfilled their military duties to defend the church. We have a lovely holiday devoted to the priest who married a number of these young men in defiance of that edict. How fitting that we have an arrow associated with St. Valentine's Day, as he was executed for these marriages by a firing squad. Bowmen in those days. I have seen any number of these protests simply by attending any activity associated with Pride. Quite often, the Baton Rouge Pride event draws a large number of protesters from a particular church which has become more of a professional protesters organization than any real semblance of a church. With their signs and bullhorns admonishing the sinful behavior of the participants and quoting convenient Bible verses from Leviticus. Amazing how often the New Testament churches dip into the Old Testament to prove a point. They used Leviticus 18:22, a rather poor choice since it didn't appear as an anti-homosexual text until 1946, and in German translations not until 1983. That was when the Greek term arsenokoitia was first translated to indicate homosexuality, now saying that a man should not lay with another man as with a woman, when a more accurate translation would be the one used in previous editions, that man should not lay with young boys as he does with a woman. A good example is that the term had previously been translated in 1 Corinthians, an actual New Testament source, as boy molesters will not inherit the kingdom of God. I just love the fact that these protesters are standing there shouting at all of the sinful gay people while wearing mixed fabric clothing. That's Leviticus 19:19. With the sleeves rolled up to show off their tattoos. That's Leviticus 19:28. And no doubt heading out to celebrate with a rare steak. That's Leviticus 19:26. Or a nice shellfish dinner, Leviticus 20:25. After all, they are tourists in Louisiana, in spite of the fact that all of these things are admonished in Leviticus and can be found by continuing reading a chapter or two beyond the one that they're using to prove their own point. The retelling of any of these tales leads to a further understanding of how to get away with hypocrisy. You choose the right examples to show and the right ones to omit. As a photographer, I once photographed an Orthodox Jewish wedding where at the reception, the rabbi blessed the chicken for the dinner. This particular chicken was large, round, pinkish in color with a rather sizable bone near the middle. I edited out of the images of the table. Everyone was happy and ate the chicken, but to me, it still tasted like ham. I must not have been as devoutly persuaded as the rest of the guests. In a Baptist church, after hearing a 30-minute oration about being saved not by your acts or deeds, but by the grace of God alone, during the closing prayer, another minister prompted, with every head bowed and all eyes closed, raise your hand if you know that if you died tonight, you would go to heaven. I guess he hadn't listened to the same service that I had. I was drawn to the Unitarian Universalist not only because of their welcoming community, but also because they urge you to think for yourself. This is best shown by our lack of a creed that must be accepted before you can become a member. Not in the Unitarian Universalist. We have the 7 principles. You don't have to memorize them or recite them when entering the sanctuary. You are, however, expected to be aware of them and consider them when you're making all of the daily decisions that we make throughout our lives. Thinking for yourself is often discouraged in schools, governments, religions, and anywhere else that they prize unquestioning followers and their own carefully handpicked leaders. That's an oversimplification, like all generalities is not correct, including that one, because it is correct, but by being correct makes it incorrect. I'll let you think about that. Quite often you hear someone say that the exception proves the rule. Where does that work in mathematics or any of the sciences? It's just the easy answer for why this happens 99 times out of 100. It excuses the possibility of incorrect data being entered, or that a larger sample would prove the theorem to be totally wrong. These manipulations are all around us, every day and everywhere you go. It's up to each of us to research and make up our own minds before we begin to spread the rumor as gospel. You see it all the time on social media, replacing that limited spring of the water cooler in the backyard fence with a worldwide platform for the spread of gossip. We can't control the dissemination of these half-truths or total fabrications by others, but we do not need to share them without having been sure of the source. Many people have told me it's not enough of a source for publication, certainly not enough for speeches from our high-ranking government officials. That brings us back to the best laid schemes o' mice and men, gang after glaying. We see something that alarms us on a post on the highly trusted and carefully monitored social media, and we decide to share it. Hundreds of friends read the post and see that you, a trusted friend, have decided to share it. So they share it, and if it was a reputable article, everything is fine. But what if it was something planted to hide something much worse? You have inadvertently aided in the cover-up. I hate to say that we should check out everything before we even like it, but maybe we should. I will leave you with a quote to think about that's a little bit more modern than November of 1785. This one comes from a film released on April 6th of 1951, a very good year in my opinion. Howard Hawks' production of The Thing from Another World. After vanquishing an alien threat in the Arctic, radio communications are restored from the isolated post to the Air Force Base in Nome. News photographer Ned Scott, who'd been on the scene, is allowed to speak to the other reporters gathered near the radio room at the base in Nome. Scotty grabs the microphone dramatically, and after telling his account of the events that he had witnessed in that isolated outpost, he announces to the world, "Keep watching the skies. Keep watching the skies." An important note, a serious warning is usually repeated, but only once, because repeating a lie 3 times makes it seem credible. It goes for news about anything, the return to normalcy after the pandemic, what happened yesterday is told by different reporters, and anything that you read on social media. Don't let your guard down. Don't let your guard down. Wear your mask and social distance. That's right, wear your mask and social distance. And otherwise, our return to normalcy might just gang after glay for yet another year. In today's benediction, after such a cautionary tale is laid out in the readings and the sermon, you must be expecting some heavy message in this benediction as well. I'm going to impart to you some wisdom that I acquired some time ago and found it useful in my life's journey so far. Summed up in 2 simple words: be kind. That's all, just be kind. It stops the spread of malicious gossip, hatred, and bigotry. No special circumstances, and no one is excluded. Be kind. It is just that simple. Go out into the world around you and be kind.